Good. All right. All right. Thanks everyone for coming today. My name is Scott Rollader. I'm the instructor up here at Billiard Factory. For those of you that are new, welcome. And I do these clinics, free clinics, once a month, usually the second Saturday of the month, and I cover a different topic every month. And right now I'm in the middle of kind of an 8-part series. I call it kind of a master class or how to play pool series. I started out with fundamentals and kind of worked through making, position play, like everything you would need to know. Today's class is going to be on kicking and banking. Some of the banking may also flow over to next month's class. So kicking is something I've studied a lot. I used to play 3-cushion a lot. I've got probably 10 or 12 books on just kicking systems alone. I started documenting my own stuff probably 20 years ago. And of course now on YouTube, there's a lot of people out there that have kicking videos and things you can go watch. But a lot of times I find they gloss over some details that are only good for maybe a small range of positions. So I kind of wanted to go into a little more detail on some kicking systems you can use to get out of either when you hook yourself or when your opponent ends up playing safe on you. I think we talked about 1 or 2 classes ago that probably about 2/3 of the 9-ball games at the professional level are won with some sort of defense. I'm sure that number is even much higher at the amateur level. So it's really important to learn how to play safe and to learn how to get out of the safeties as well. So that's kind of what I want to hope to cover today. As usual, if you have any questions or whatever as I go through stuff, just raise your hand, let me know. I'm going to be using our projector system today to show some of the lines. I noticed in the past I've done like 2 or 3 kicking clinics over the last 4 or 5 years, and for me, I'm a math on a computer guy, so if somebody starts counting, I get it. People start using fractions, I get it, but other people don't like that. I tried using little number cutouts and everything, and it worked, but with this projection system, hopefully while I'm talking and kind of showing the system, you can actually see the lines and see the numbers, and it'll kind of make a little more sense to you. Let me turn that on. Okay, this is my cheat sheet, but also for anybody that's watching online. So let's talk about like kind of kicking systems and banking systems, if you will. So there are a lot of top professional players that really don't know any systems at all, or know very few. I've talked to a number of people. Matter of fact, one of the top 3-cushion players in the world 10 or 12 years ago, 15 years ago maybe now, he reportedly used no systems whatsoever. But most of the people know at least a handful of systems, and it really does help you I think build up your feel for what the shot should look like, as opposed to just starting from scratch. The system is only going to be as good as kind of you're practicing it and your accuracy with it. So as I kind of showed on here, I wanted to cover some of these points. So one thing I hear a lot is people will say, oh, well, do you know the diamond system? So there's not one diamond system that uses these diamond markings on the table. There's probably dozens, if not hundreds. Usually when people talk about the diamond system, they're talking about the 3-rail system, which is, the shot where you would basically, shoot somewhere like this and try to make the ball go into the corner pocket. And there's a whole bunch of numbering with that. I'm going to go into that next class. It's pretty simple math, but again, once you know the numbers, you can be very accurate kicking 3 rails around the table. That's usually what people refer to when they talk about the diamond system. For anybody that watches a lot of pool on YouTube or things like that, you notice like snooker tables and some of the old billiard and pool tables don't have any diamond markings on them. So when people are banking or kicking on those tables, they have to do it largely by feel, or sort of mentally subdividing the rail into different portions. We have these nice diamond markers, so it makes it a little bit easier. Now I gotta walk over here. Okay, another thing that there's a lot of confusion around with different systems. Number one, there's no set of numbers that universally apply to every system. Basically, somebody figured out a way to use the diamonds to help make a shot, and they develop some math maybe to go around that. Every system might be a little different. One system, this might be 1, 2, 3, 4 all the way down the table. Another one, it could be 3, 5, 7. You know, it could be any kind of numbering. It and practice it until you kind of can just do it very intuitively. So the other thing that comes up a lot is with the diamonds themselves. The question is, if I'm aiming at, let's say my aim point is this diamond. So the question is, do I aim at the diamond on the rail, or do I aim at the point opposite the diamond? And so again, that varies from system to system. Most of the time, you're aiming at the actual spot on the rail. So if you look, I'll shoot it this way. If I have an angled shot, and I'm aiming into this second diamond right here, put a piece of chalk. It's hard to see when it's dark. So if I'm aiming at this spot right here, and the cue ball, let's say, is up here, if somebody says aim at the second diamond, I would actually be aiming at that chalk. So if you notice my cue ball path opposite the diamond, so it's actually in this case probably 2 or 3 inches difference, and that's going to have a dramatic effect on where the cue ball goes. I find a good, for any of you guys that play here in town, most of the pool halls now have diamond tables. Diamond tables play shorter than Brunswick tables, which means the cue ball comes off the cushion a little sharper. So I noticed that a lot of the systems that I've learned and I used over the years, I had to modify them when I started playing on diamond tables, because on a Brunswick table, a lot of times I can shoot through the diamond. If I do that on the diamond table, it actually comes up a little short. So what I do instead is I aim at the spot opposite the diamond, and it tends to be a good adjustment for the tables that play short. And that's not just diamonds. There could be other tables out there that are like that too, but those are the most common right now.
Scott, what causes that to happen? Is it related to the rubber itself?
Yeah, so the question was what causes that to happen. So if a table plays short or long, a lot of times it has to do with the condition of the felt, whether the felt's new or old. Also the type of rubber. The type of rubber that the rails that Diamond uses, they're just a little more, maybe bouncy's the word. Where, again, when you hit a ball into a rail, it compresses the rail a little bit before it comes out. And on the Diamonds, it just seems like when it hits, it almost sort of off the rail. So they come off very sharp. And it's not necessarily good or bad. There's people that love Brunswick tables. There's people that love Diamond tables, and people that hate, one or the other as well. You just have to play a little bit differently to accomplish what you're trying to do. And again, when you're using a system, you just have to be aware of that, and you have to kind of test it out a little bit. I kind of mentioned, again, the system. People sometimes think, oh, I'm going to use a system, I'm going to make every shot. You'll probably see, even as I'm doing this here, even with the lines on the table or whatever, don't react perfectly. This rail could be a little deader than this rail. I had a clinic I taught one time on banking, and I was doing a simple one rail bank that I would make 90% of the time, and there was a spot like right about here in the rail that just something was wrong with it, and every time it hit, it just did something funny. I turned around and made the shot from the other direction, and it was no problem. So you can't control that on a table unless you play on a specific table all the time, but every table is going to be a little different. Conditions are going to be a little different. Humidity is going to make a difference. Again, whether the cloth is new, whether the balls have just been recently polished, whether they're dirty, the type of table, the type of rails, all those things have to be taken into account. So I always look at kicking systems as it's a really good way to build up your feel and build up your kind of experience for how to hit a shot. And I know for me, it's kind of my go-to way of aiming a shot. But you still have to use kind of some common sense and a little bit of feel when you're doing it. Stroke and spin is another thing I want to cover. So when I'm hitting a regular shot, something like this, and I'm just trying to make the ball into the pocket, if I accidentally put a little right English on the cue ball or a little left English because my stroke's not good or my eye is a little bit off, a lot of times I can still make the ball, especially with a low deflection shaft. Your shaft gets angled a little bit. you might still make it. When you're hitting into a rail with the cue ball, put an extra spin on the cue ball, it's really going to be noticeable. And we'll show some of those examples later. So I notice, especially with amateur players when they're doing kicking systems, if the system calls for you hitting the ball in the center of the ball, and they accidentally hit a little right or a little left, the kick shot's going to miss. More dramatically so than they would if they were shooting a ball. And I even have some high-level, intermediate, and even low-level advanced players that I've worked with that have built very complex systems around the fact that they don't their ball correctly. So when they get down and cue the cue ball, they were always like a quarter tip to the right. And they didn't know it for years that they were playing, but it shows up when you're kicking or banking, because when you think you're hitting center ball and you're actually putting a quarter tip or right English on something, it's going to go in a much different direction. Speed is a factor. So when I'm trying to hit a kick shot, and this comes with experience, but your first goal when you're trying to kick at a ball is just to hit it. The better you get and the better competition you play, it's more important to try to get a good result out of the kick shot. You're trying to hit a certain part of the ball or try to develop some distance between the balls. So if I'm aiming a kick shot at a slow speed or a medium speed or a firm speed, I'm going to have to aim slightly differently because of the speed. And again, it's because the cue ball is going to compress into the cushion and come off at a slightly different angle than if it's very soft. So personally, I try to practice at kind of a nice, smooth, like easy speed. You know, so I'll just set up a random shot. So let's just say I was kicking at that ball. I would try to practice at kind of, you know, like something like that speed. Barely hit it. And then I would try to also practice at kind of a firmer speed. So I might also practice a system where, you know, I was hitting the ball like that. Hey, how about that? And then if you learn like the easy speed and you learn the firm speed, you can kind of extrapolate in between those. You're usually not going to hit it super, super hard. Usually it's kind of somewhere in that range. So the other thing is a lot of these systems, they'll number all the diamonds or they'll talk about different ways of doing things. And just be aware that sometimes when you get to the edges of the system, when you're very straight into the rail or where you have a very shallow angle into the rail, sometimes the numbers break down and it doesn't work as well, which is why you have to develop, again, a little bit of feel with that. Also, if the cue ball is very close to a rail, if I'm aiming into the second diamond, it's a lot different if I'm here aiming into the second diamond or if I'm right here. Typically, when you're this close, the cue ball tends to bounce a little off the rail. It can sometimes curve forward a little bit. So again, those are just things you have to be aware of. And then the last thing is practice. It's great to watch a YouTube video or to listen to this and learn a system, but you have to practice it until you kind of own it, if you will. The diamond system, the cue ball starts, you look at where you want to hit on the rail and you subtract those two numbers. So like 5 minus 2 is 3, right? Pretty simple. I was a math major, so pretty simple math. When I learned the system, I would spend 2 minutes over a shot trying to figure out where's my cue ball coming from, where's the ball going to, and it would just be, because if the cue ball's in the middle of the table, you know, what number is it coming from? It only has a number when you lay your stick down and you decide to point in that direction. Now I can go down here and figure out where my number is. So kind of learning all that and figuring all that out and learning all the adjustments, it took some time. So you have to practice these and kind of get comfortable with them. Okay. So when I've gone over this before, I've used terms like 2-to-1 ratio or equal triangles or equal angles or angle in and angle out, and there seemed to be some confusion around that. So this is kind of a real simple basic diagram, and I just wanted to show, and you can't see the numbers on the balls because of the way the projection system works, but if you start from this spot right here, this is the second diamond. So if I'm trying to hit the corner pocket, I basically want to just cut that distance in half and aim at that spot on the opposite rail. So if I'm starting here from the second diamond, I would aim at the first diamond and then that would bring me to the corner pocket. And that's because basically the angles are the same. I have the same angle going in that I have going out, and that kind of works anywhere on the table. So wherever you are, if you cut the distance in half on the opposite side of the table, that's a really good starting point to aim if you're trying to hit another spot, in this case the corner pocket. So these are kind of common lines. So a lot of times people will refer to this as the 2-to-1 line, because you're starting from the second diamond and going to the first diamond and then going to the... This right here would be the 4-to-2 line, and then this would be 6-to-3, and then this would be 8-to-4, and then of course there's, you know, the half marks in between. So just to kind of show you, if I put, sorry, again, this would be kind of a center ball and kind of a slow speed. Okay. Now again, if I hit this on a different table, I may have to adjust slightly. For instance, on the diamond tables, I would have to actually aim this, instead of aiming at the diamond, I would have to aim a little bit opposite the diamond because the table plays shorter, which really amounts to usually about a... So I'll try to... Okay, so you can see, like, this is really good practice as well, like when you're learning some of these things, just to set it up on that perfect kind of 2-to-1 angle and practice, you know, throw some balls out on the table and practice kicking them in from different areas. And you can see the speed and everything. Now when you get up here to the corner, the side pocket gets in the way a little, so you hit as close as you can to the point, and I might put just a hair of English on the ball just to kind of help it turn into the pocket. But again, when you're playing a game and the ball's sitting down here in the corner, it's fairly simple system just to kind of cut the numbers in half and just look at where you are. So this is really good practice. I have a bunch of drills dealing with this and some other kick shots, but just getting comfortable knowing that when you hit the ball that it's going to go to a certain spot is really useful. So here's a good example. The exact diamonds. So I have same kind of example, right? Have a ball sitting down here in the corner, and you know, for whatever reason you're blocked, so my cue ball is kind of sitting out here in the middle of the table. So if it's sitting here, it's kind of easy to figure out what number you're on. You can say, okay, I'm 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 diamonds away. I can aim at 2.5 diamonds and should hit the corner. But when it's out in the middle of the table, again, as I mentioned before, you have to figure out kind of where your number is, if that makes sense. So a good way to do this is to start with the even numbers. Start with the ones that you know. So if I were doing this in a game, I could start at 5, and that would be halfway, so that'd be 2.5. So I could look at that line, and I can see that my cue ball is just a little bit off that line. So I can basically just kind of keep going up by 2s and cutting that distance in half until I find the line. So if I start at 52, and the reason I'm calling this 52, a lot of times people number these in tens to get rid of the fractions. So if I'm numbering these, this would be 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, and then the same numbers on the other side. So if this is 50, and that's a little bit off, I'd go 52 to 26, or I'd go 54 to 27, or 50, you know what I mean? Just keep going all the way up. And again, that distance is half of whatever this distance is. So it seems, I don't think it's complicated at all. I think a lot of people find it is, but if you can visualize these angles and hit that ball every time, more power to you. I cannot. I mean, I can, I guess, with experience, but I prefer kind of having that grounding of double checking it with the numbers to make sure I'm pretty close to it. So again, if I see this line, I'm at 52, I would aim at 26. So on a 9-foot table, each unit is basically about an inch, slightly more than an inch. So if I can look at my halfway point and basically just adjust 1 inch higher, and that would be where 26 is. So again, 10, 20, I'd go to 25 and just go 1 inch higher for 26. So again, if I hit this the same way I hit the other ones, I should make the ball. And scratch and lose the game. But can't always control that. So does this make sense to everybody as far as, okay? Because I know it's funny, my old pool partner Neil, he kind of very a visual player, very feel player, he's a very good player, just different approach than me. He would visualize his shots and feel everything, and I'm very mechanical and analytical about things. He saw this somewhere. I tried to show him systems. He didn't want to learn anything about them. He saw a video or something somewhere, and he started counting all of his kick shots and all of his bank shots, and he started making like all kinds of things, and his confidence just really soared. And he's like, "Hey, do you know about this?" I'm like, yeah. This is like 101, like, you know, systems. But the cool thing was he was able to combine his feel with the system and increase his percentage of making the shots. Okay, so kind of covered what to do when the ball's not near the rail. So also the ball you're trying to hit may not be near the rail. So if we put an object ball, say right here, it's great if I can hit the cue ball to the corner, but I don't want to go to the corner. I want to go and want to hit the 10 ball. So again, let's just say the cue ball is right here. What I showed on my diagram here is that roughly I'm at 55 between these two diamonds. So again, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, this would be 55. So if I cut 55 in half, it's 27 and a half. So again, that would be about right here. So if I was to go to the corner, that would be my 2-to-1 line. So, and I'll just shoot it real quick. So, right, so that's going to be my 2-to-1 line going to the corner. So if I want to hit a ball that's not at the corner, I have to kind of estimate what number I think I want to hit on the rail. So if I look at my line coming off of here, I can kind of visualize that, you know, maybe I want to come into this first diamond, which would be 10. So basically what I do is I take half of this number, whatever this is, and add it to the original spot that I had picked out. So half of 10 is 5, so I'm going to add 5 to this number, and so my new spot that I want to aim at would be 32 and a half. So it's basically a quarter of the way between those two diamonds up here. And so I don't worry about the math anymore after that. Once I figure out my 0 line to the pocket, and then I figure out where I want to hit, I just take half that number and add it. And as long as the cue ball is near the rail like this, it's easy to add it and just aim at that new spot. So if I aim at the 32 and a half mark, I should hit the ball. And I love doing that in games, by the way. I love it more than making shots. I don't know why, I just do. And again, I don't care who you are. Nobody's going to make that shot every time. If you guys watch some of the YouTube videos out there and stuff, I mean, it's everything's, and I would do the same thing. If I'm producing a DVD, every shot's going in. You know, but I do feel like I can hit that ball almost every single time. If I don't hit it, I did something drastically wrong. But again, my goal may be to try to make it. My goal may be to hit it hard and send it around the table. But I'm going to hit it pretty often. So does this all make sense as far as making the adjustment or whatever? Now, the reason why you have to practice this, number one, just getting used to the math. You don't want to spend 30 seconds over your shot trying to figure this out. And if you're nervous or anxious, trust me, the math goes out the window sometimes. But with practice, like if I had this shot, it probably would take me 2 to 4 seconds to figure out where I wanted to aim, and I would just use all my energy aiming the shot and figuring out what I. Because I spent time, you know, when I look at this right away, I can just kind of visually look over and say, okay, that's where my 2-to-1 angle is, and I see where that is, and I can quickly make that adjustment. It can be tough sometimes if the ball's kind of out in the middle of the table and the cue ball's here, right? I'll try to see if I can get to a blank spot. So I want to do a little bit of this interactively as well. So, you know, if you had a shot like this, you know, let's reverse it. Let's say you're on the 8 ball, right? and you have to hit the 8, trying to figure out where the cue ball is coming from and where it can be a little challenging, especially if you don't practice it a lot. Me, myself, there's another kicking system that I would use for a shot like this, and I'm going to show that in a little bit. But if I had to use this one system for it, I would have to find my 0 line. So if I look, I'm just about on that 5 diamonds away, so at 50 to 2.5. So I'm just about on this line right here. So what I would do then is, again, you can do this with your stick or visually. I would look at that line, and then I would come over like this and point to the corner pocket and see if that ball was on the line. If it is, I'm lucky and I can hit right at my mark. I can see right now it's not, so I have to kind of estimate where it's going to hit. So when I look down here, it looks like it's going to hit about halfway, which would be 5. This would be 0, 10, so 5 right here. So half of 5 is 2.5. So I would add 2.5 to that and basically put me right about there. So my new aim spot would be kind of right there. And again, I'd want to hit it with that same speed and everything that I was doing before. Okay, so it's pretty accurate. Now again, for me, there's another system that's a little quicker that I would use. A lot of these one rail systems I'm showing you, there's dozens of them that are all based on some sort of geometry or math, and they're just basically different ways to get at the same result. So whichever one you like better, whichever one fits the particular shot. Sometimes when you have shots that are, you know, very far away like this, it can be hard to visualize the lines and the numbers. Sometimes, you know, the number may land in a spot that's where the side pocket is or something, so you have to adjust a little bit. But any questions on? There's a lot of adjustments on this. You know, Tor Lowry has some kicking videos out there. There's a couple of inconsistencies in things, but he actually goes through a nice production value and goes through a lot of this. It's fairly inexpensive download, I think. Yes?
Well, I'm not going to muddy the water for anybody. Maybe I'm confusing systems. Where exactly is the 0 diamond location at the corner pocket on the rail? Are you using it at the center of the pocket jaws, or is it like, I don't know if you know.
Yeah, so technically, so the question was where the 0 point was on the table. So if you look at a lot of 3 cushion tables, and if you look at it from a pure geometry standpoint, technically, if you measure the distance between this diamond and this diamond, and if you come down, the diamond actually probably falls about right here. It's not actually in the middle of the pocket. There's kind of a diamond, if you will, here, and another one kind of right there. For practical purposes, when I'm playing pool, I just use the center of the pocket. Yeah, put it this way, it's usually close enough where, yeah, it's not going to matter. Yeah, especially again because the rails, that's a good question though, especially because the rails do add a little spin to the ball when you hit at an angle or whatever. But if you see people playing 3 cushion, a lot of times if those diamonds are there, they'll be very precise about which corner they're using. It just confuses things. So now there's other adjustments with this. I was saying about Tor Lowry stuff or other, I mean, it's been around for a long time. I think he just kind of repackaged it and made it kind of more modern and put all the graphics and everything on it, which he did a good job with. But there are adjustments you can make when the cue ball comes around to the end rail. There's adjustments you can make when the object ball goes around to the end rail. There's adjustments when you're going to the side pocket. So I could literally sit here today until they close at 6 o'clock and talk about kicking systems, but I've been given about an hour, so. But anyways, if anyone's interested in that, I'm more than happy to share more afterwards. But it just gives you a good baseline to hit those kind of simple one rail shots. And honestly, the one rail kicks are, I think, the most difficult. When the ball's out in the middle of the table like that, any little variance in aiming or spin is going to cause you to miss. When a ball is near the rail, you can actually hit it coming out of the rail or coming into the rail, so you have a much wider range of area to hit. Okay, so I also wanted to show that this works lengthwise as well. Numbers are the same, it works out exactly the same. So in this example that I have diagrammed, again, trying to kick at a ball in the corner pocket, I got a blocker right here. So this is my 0 point because this is where I'm trying to hit. So I count 10, 20, 30, and I'm looking maybe right around here trying to figure out what is half of this number that I can aim at. So if I come over about 4 inches, that would be 34, and I can look up here. Half of 34 is 17, so that would be about right there, about 3 inches away from that middle diamond. So again, even if the math somehow messes you up and you're in a situation, in a game situation, if you just can visualize those angles being the same going in and coming out, I mean, that's how a lot of people kick anyways. So if you look at it, I mean, if I cut this in half, you know, I've got the same kind of triangles, the same angles on both sides. So if this isn't your kind of cup of tea, doing all the math and everything, just visualize that equal angle, and that'll do just as well. So again, if I aim right down this line, again, it's important to stay in the center of the ball and just, you know, make a nice easy stroke. I mean, again, you have pretty good success making the ball. Exactly, yep. Now again, this also works right if the ball's anywhere on this line. So if I happen to be like this and I see this ball and I can project my line down here and say, oh, that's right on that 34 line, it's the same thing. Now again, my goal here may not be to make the ball, but my goal is going to be to try to hit the ball, you know. And again, I would never think that my percentage of making that ball is going to be very high, maybe 10% or something, especially in a game where it's going to be different. You get that one shot at it, but my goal may be to kick it softly and try to land it down here, or just get a hit on the ball. A lot of times it's really important when you're playing, even if I hit the ball and leave a very easy shot for my opponent, it is better than giving them ball in hand, where they can subtly move the cue ball somewhere else. I mean, even if I leave somebody, you know, this shot, and their next shot is up here, you know, I still rather would leave them straight in like this than let them put the cue ball and put it like that. I don't know why. I think maybe just a mental thing, but if you kick almost every ball that your opponent plays defense against you on, it's a little demoralizing. They feel like they can't hide you, and then they try harder and harder to hide. Safeties become worse and worse sometimes, and you actually get some benefits out of it. This is kind of an example that I just talked about. So I actually use this system when I'm playing. So I use probably 5 or 6 one-rail systems when I'm playing, most commonly. And it depends on the type of shot and how the balls are laying. Sometimes one's easier for me than the other. But this is one where I could do that calculation again, coming from this direction. I could do the calculation as 0, try to figure out where this ball really is and cut the number in half and add and do all the things I just talked about. But sometimes it's good just to check and see if you happen to be on an even triangle, I call it. So if I look at where the cue ball is coming from and I pick a spot and say I'm halfway between these diamonds, I try to look at a spot that's easy to calculate. So I might look at this diamond or look at the halfway point here. So if I look at the halfway point here, that would be 1, 2 diamonds away. So I go another 1, 2 diamonds away, and I put my stick there, and if that ball just happens to be on that line, I don't have to do any math. I don't have to worry about it. I know that I've got those equal angles, so if I just aim halfway in between, I'm going to hit the ball. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Okay. And there's a lot of times it's interesting. So somebody could leave you like this, and you can only hit, like as far up as you can hit really is that diamond. So if I look, and I'm an inch inside this diamond pointing to that diamond, well, I'll go up here and come an inch down so that, again, the angles are equal, and I'll just kind of see, am I on that spot, or can I twist it with a little spin or whatever? And I'll show you that in a minute. So again, my first glance sometimes is to just look and see if it's even. So if I'm on this line, I know I can aim right at that halfway point, you know, and make a good clean hit on that ball. And as much as I like the systems or whatever, that sometimes is the first thing I'll look at. Is just sometimes the balls just lay where it's just perfectly right on a line where it's easy to see.
Scott,
Yeah.
what do you do when your angle is right at the side pocket? How do you adjust?
Okay, so we'll talk about that here in just a minute, sort of. But yeah, so when if your determined spot is right in the hole of the side pocket, not make a good hit, then you have to adjust one way or the other and kind of turn it in with some spin. So I'm actually going to talk about that right now.
Okay.
So I just kind of covered the basic kind of 2-to-1 system. You can call it, there's a bunch of different names for it. But again, whether you do it with diamonds or whether you do it with the numbers, either way, it's the same principle. So now I want to talk about using spin to alter the angle. So again, if I start from the corner pocket here and I aim at that first diamond with, again, center ball on a normal table, normal conditions, it's going to come at, it's going to come another diamond up, right? So I get that nice 2-to-1 angle. So I'll just shoot it real quick so you see, and that would be the dashed line that's on here. Okay, so it's going to come from the corner to 2. I aim halfway in between, it's 1. So again, this is very widely dependent on your stroke and your level of ability or whatever, but in general, tip of English on the ball, for every half a tip of English, it's going to go up 1 diamond farther. And again, it's totally a guideline. There's no systematic or geometric principles behind that. It's just a good guideline. And again, my half a tip of English is going to be different than your half a tip of English. And so you just have to kind of see for yourself how much of a difference this makes. But I'm going to kind of show you. And for anybody that is not sure, a lot of people call English, they talk about 1, 2, or 3 tips of English. It's actually really a half 1 or 1.5 tips. So basically, if your tip is on the cue ball, if you move it to the center of the tip now becomes where the edge of the tip was, you're basically moving half of the tip over. And a lot of people call that 1 tip, but you're really not moving the entire tip. It's only half. So however you want to think about it, that's fine. So I'm going to try to go now 1 diamond higher. And so I'm going to get down on the cue ball, and I don't think you'll be able to see this, but if that was center ball, I'm going to basically put the dot where a half a tip of English would be. Okay, so I go center, I come over half a tip. Okay, so I hit the 1 ball then. So if I come over a full tip of English, again, that's going to go 1, 2 diamonds higher. So again, if I aim at that same spot, I go over half a tip and go over another half. Okay. And if I do maximum English right before I'm about to miscue and put a full like 1.5 tips, or some people again will call it 3 tips of English, I should be able to still reach the 3 ball. So again, I'm going to go way out on the edge of the ball. Okay. So you can see it's not a geometric system. I've been doing this a long time, so I think it matches pretty well with how I apply English, and it's a really good guideline or principle for twisting the ball when something's in the way. So if I have, again, I'll show you real quick. So a good example would be like right here. My 2-to-1 line, I'm 2 diamonds away, so halfway would be 1 diamond, which means my aim point is right there. Well, that's a little bit of a problem. So you could aim above it and use left English, reverse English to kind of straighten it out, or you could aim below it and use a little bit of English to widen it out. So for me personally, it's a little easier to control the running English, the helping English, instead of the reverse. So if I aim halfway, that halfway point is going to bring me to this pocket. So if I add a half a tip of English, it's going to go 1 diamond farther, like just in the examples I just shot. So for this example, I would aim right here at the halfway point and just put 1 tip of English on it. Nope, put a little too much English. And again, that's why where this is, if I was doing this in a game, I'm going to give this every bit of attention that I would have shot. I'm shooting a little quick here and talking, but that's another point I wanted to make earlier is when you have a kick shot, I see so many people, even if they do some calculations, they get down and they're like, you know, shooting real fast and they just whip their stick. Like, you have to use your same pre-shot routine, same amount of care you would take on a shot. Especially if you're trying to alter it with English or something. Well, that time I didn't use enough. And you can see when you have stuff like this, it's very dependent on spin and speed, but you can see how you can get away from that giant hole there.
Hey Scott, if you use reverse English, is the geometry the same? Or does it change?
It is. I'll try to do one of those. So the question was, if you use reverse English, is the geometry the same? Again, if I aim up here, and that would normally take me to this diamond, I can use left English and bring it down a diamond. The problem is, depending on your entry angle into the rail, sometimes reverse English doesn't grab as much. So I wouldn't want to do this, but I think it should be makeable. Yeah, see how that straightened out? It's harder to predict how much it's going to straighten out. But if there were balls like all along here, then it would be a viable shot. Yeah, you can see that. So it straightens out. I always prefer, if I'm hitting kick shots, I prefer to use a little bit of running English, which is the helping English, because if you use a little more than a little, or a little less than a little, it still sort of has that running English on it. If you're using a system that requires you to hit center ball, you have to be very exact center ball. If you use a trace of English one way or the other, you're going to skew the results. So from playing three cushion and stuff, if you're using running English, which is about a half a tip of English, if you happen to put like a quarter tip on, or you happen to turn into it and spin it a little more, the rails tend to kind of self-correct a little bit, and the ball tends to go where you want it to go. And again, you have to be very careful when you're using dead ball systems like in the center axis of the ball, that you hit exactly in the center.
While you're hitting that shot, the speed at which you hit it, that would affect the spin off the cushion, wouldn't it? Adjust.
Yeah.
If you hit it too hard, it would.
It's good. The spin could take more or less depending on the table. Yep.
So that's
About the speed, and again, that's why I said earlier, when I'm practicing the kicks, I'm going to try to practice them at a firm speed and at kind of a 2 or 3 out of 10 speed, and get that feel in between. When you're introducing spin like that into the kick shots, it largely becomes an exercise in feel. There's no way I can systematically tell you to aim this much different because you're hitting it hard versus soft. That's just experience and feel. But in this example that I had with the side pocket, if I was aiming right here and I put a ton of speed on it and I put a ton of reverse English on it, I could probably get it to reverse. Instead of coming straight across, I could almost get it to come back in the side pocket. So I have to be very cognizant of the speed I'm using in combination with the spin. I think I have an example, yeah. So here's a good example. Again, we were just kind of talking about this, but this is from earlier. So I had that example earlier where I started here. I found a spot 2 diamonds away, and then I look at another spot that was 2 diamonds away, and my line was right here. So if someone hides me like this, that's about the only spot I can see. So I start all my baseline calculations from there. So if that's the spot I can see, and this is my 2 to 1 line, I'm going to go 1 diamond up, and then I'm going to go another diamond up, and I'm going to see, okay, that's kind of where the 8 ball is. So it's 2 diamonds away from my baseline, which is of English on the cue ball. And again, if I hit this hard, soft, it's going to make a difference, but it gives me a really good estimate as opposed to just 2 half tips of English. Yep. Yep. So I'm going to come here, I'm going to go 1 tip over, 2 tips, again, half and 1. And the reason why, I'll just say, just to be clear, the reason why people call it 1, 2, 3 tips, and I still do it too, like colloquially when I'm writing and stuff, because of the chalk marks that are left on the ball. if you move your tip a half tip over and shoot, and do another half tip and shoot, you end up with 3 little dots on the ball, and it looks like it's 1, 2, 3, and they're all like 3 millimeters apart, so it just looks like it's 1, 2, 3 tips. So that's, I think, where people started using that. So, okay, so I'm going to go half tip, so basically a full tip over, and again, kind of a soft to medium speed. Okay. So again, that's going to be an estimate. I don't expect to make that ball, but because of the work I did trying to figure out roughly how much English I need, I know I can hit the ball and should be pretty safe doing that. Does that make sense for everybody?
Yeah.
Okay. And I use this principle all the time, especially sometimes when somebody really, really hooks you. I don't know, trying to hit a ball like out here, and you may be looking, I'll move this down a little so it's easier to see. You may be looking and saying, well, if I hit right here, I'm about an inch inside this diamond, which means I'm going to come to like right here. And that's not very far when the 5 ball's way up there. But I'll take this same spot and keep my stick kind of there, and I'll go to that same spot 1 diamond up, and then that same spot 1 diamond up, and then that same spot 1 diamond up. So I'm like, okay, if I put like maximum English on this ball, I should be able to hit it. And so I'll aim, a matter of fact, if I can squeeze just a little higher than that first diamond, then it'll even help a little more. So it's a little hard when you're on the rail, so I'll elevate a little bit. Okay. So that lets you know whether the shot is workable or not. If I had done those kind of quick calculations either visually or with my stick, and I end up looking and the 5 ball is up here and I'm already at my max point, then I know I've got to do something else. No matter what I do, unless I do an essay or something, I'm not going to be able to hit it. So I would try a different option. Okay, so here's another really good system, and it works with 1, 2, 3, 4 rail kicks and banks, and it's called Spot on the Wall. I don't know how many of you have heard about it or seen it, but the principle is basically if you envision another pool table sort of next to this pool table and another one kind of on the end of the pool table, you're basically shooting at a mirror point on that kind of invisible mirror table. And so the way it works is if you picture a table that's next to this, the other rail would be roughly, on a 9-foot table, would be roughly 4.5, 5 feet away. And if you're going lengthwise, the table would be roughly 9, 10 feet away. So what the principle is you pick a spot that's about 5 feet away if you're shooting side to side, or about 10 feet away if you're shooting diagonally or lengthwise. And once you pick a spot on a line that you know, you can then aim at that spot from any position within reason on the table, and the ball will go to the same location. So in my example here, let's put a ball over here. So again, this is right on this line. I'm one, go up 2 diamonds, and then go up 2 more diamonds. This ball is right on that, again, that nice 2 to 1 line, right? Everybody see that? So what I do, and Mark should have sat a little more to his right, but yes. So what I'll do is I'll look at my 2 to 1 line, and I'll try to project out about 5 feet or so, and so roughly where that other table is, and I'll try to find a spot that I can aim at. So if I get down here and look, I'm about visually probably 2 inches to the right of the end of that corner pocket. A lot of times in a pool room, there'll be a wall, there'll be a person standing still just long enough for you to. And if you practice, you can get good at just picking a spot out in space and just sort of moving real quick over while you still have that spot locked in and just have something to aim at. So if I put the cue ball here and I just aim right down this line, just to make sure the baseline works, right, I hit the ball. So I put some random examples here. Really doesn't matter where I put the cue ball, though. I was just trying to show that, you know, whether the cue ball's any of these spots, if I aim 2 inches to the right of that corner pocket, I should hit that ball or come pretty close to it. So I'm just going to put it randomly. So again, I would look here, aim at that spot, and just get down. And again, I'm trying to hit the same speed, same everything. Nope. I think I hit my spot a little off. And again, you have to be pretty accurate at the spot that you're aiming at. Okay. So this can be a very powerful technique. It can take a lot of the math away. Instead of you sitting there and calculating, you know, 63 and 31 and a half and all these kind of numbers, if you find a number that's even and that you know works, you can look at that spot on the wall and just shoot at that spot. So again, if I put the ball here, I'm going to look right at just an inch or two to the right of that table. Okay. So those guys back in the day that would play on tables, and they would know what their 3-rail spot was on the table, right? And they'd have a little edge of a picture frame or a little whatever, so they knew wherever they were on the table, if they aimed at that edge, the ball would go 3 rails around the table and go to the corner. So I use this a lot when I'm playing too. Sometimes I'm sure none of my opponents have ever asked me what I was doing, but you know, I might have a kick shot like this, like kicking 2 rails or something, and I'm over here like lining something up. I'm not even looking at the cue ball. I'm just lining it up from a location that I know is on for that shot, and once I pick my little spot, then I just come over to the cue ball and hit it. So it works really well. And again, if you get used to visualizing these 2-to-1 angles and those ratios, a lot of times when you're playing and somebody hooks you, you can find a spot where it's an even number and you don't have to do the math and the fractions and all that. You just know, okay, well this works from here. Does that all make sense as far as that method?
So you're basing that purely on the object ball, and then aiming the cue ball at whatever spot you find based on the object ball.
Based on where
angle.
based on where the cue ball, the line for the cue ball is projecting out to.
Yeah.
Yep. Yep. So again, let's just say I have a ball here, right? And someone hides me like right here. If I don't want to do the math, if this is 6 diamonds away, I know that my line is from the corner pocket to the 3rd diamond goes to the 6th diamond, right? Half of 6 is 3. So this is my line. So now Mark is on my line, so don't move. So I will project out and I'll look, and it's right about where his knee is. I can just aim at his knee and hit the ball. Now if he moves his knee, well, that's a problem. You did very well. So again, a lot of times when I'm playing, again, for me, I know some of them are very complex and I would not use them in a game. They're more academic, and it's really not a point because they're just another way to get at the same result. But this spot on the wall system, if you can find a simple line that works, it's easy to just project out and adjust. It's very simple at the table, and it's very, very accurate. All right, hey, this is Scott. You may notice that I lost my audience while we were doing the live stream this past clinic. We lost audio probably around 50 or 55 minutes into the presentation. So the portions that I did that day, just so I make sure that everything's there with audio, and then we'll splice this together with the original footage. So I want to go ahead and continue. Where I left off was talking about the spot on the wall system, which is a very useful system, and I demonstrated a few variations on that, and we'll cover some more of that as well a little bit later here. So the next system I want to talk about, I kind of call it the crisscross system. And this is actually something, I can't remember anymore which book or magazine article I saw this in when I was younger, but this was actually something that I used pretty extensively when I was learning to play pool to kind of help me to develop my sense of where to hit bank shots and kick shots. So I'll kind of go through it step by step, and then kind of talk through the steps. So you can see here I've got balls in a typical position. Let's just say there's a blocking ball or something right here. So the first thing you want to do is take the ball you're trying to hit and go to the rail, straight at the rail. And then you want to pivot your stick and come over to where the cue ball is. Then you want to do the same thing from the cue ball to the object ball. So you'd go straight to the rail from the cue ball and then straight over to the other ball. And you can see two lines intersect, kind of forms an X. And if you look forward from the point of the X to the rail, that is going to be the point that you want to hit in order to make the kick shot. This also works for banking. If you treat the object ball in essence as the pocket, you can do that same crisscross method and find the theoretical geometric point where you'd want to hit in order to make the bank shot. So again, as we talked about earlier, typically if you're going to hit this at a slow to a medium type speed, most tables you're going to want to hit a spot opposite the diamond. So kind of right where you see this arrow, it would be right there on the end, the edge of the rail. If you're going to hit the ball maybe kind of hard, what I like to do is maybe aim through the diamond, use a little running English, in this case right English, and that seems to work pretty well. So again, just to kind of show you physically, and again, this is not something you can do in a match typically, but this is what I used to do when I practiced. So again, I would go, let me unwind this a little bit. Okay, so I would go forward, and what I usually do is jab my tip kind of under the rail. It kind of keeps it steady. And then I'd rotate my stick until it's over the cue ball. Okay, so something like this. And then I'd go forward, and again, make sure you're perpendicular to the rail so you're not like at an angle. And then I'd come this way. And you can see if you had large distances between the balls, it might be kind of difficult to do this, but again, you can see where that X is formed, and it shows me the point that I want to hit. So again, if I aim right at the arrow, like a nice smooth speed, I'm going to hit the ball pretty full in the face. And like I said, if I'm kicking kind of more firm, I might aim at, instead of aiming right there, I might aim at that diamond and use some running English to be able to hit it kind of firm. Now again, this does provide a geometrically accurate point. As we talked about in the very beginning, tables, conditions, things like that are going to impact that. This is also kind of impractical to use in a match. You might be able to do one line with your stick and sort of visualize the other line. That would work okay. But there's a couple of shortcuts to this. And one of these is one of the ones that I use personally a lot of times when I'm kicking. So I want to kind of show the shortcuts. So this is the same exact setup. In this case, you start off with the object ball you're trying to hit. You go to the rail. And then instead of going to the cue ball, you find the midpoint between the two balls. I find it helpful to find the midpoint first before I do any rotation of the stick. So I visually locate the midpoint, and then I, again, rotate the stick. Instead of going to the cue ball, I'm going to go over that midpoint. Once I find that midpoint, I basically would parallel my stick over until I end up hitting where the cue ball is. And as you can see, that is the exact same spot that we found earlier with the crisscross method. Now you'll see, I see a number of pros use this method. It's very popular. Sometimes people do it incorrectly, but this is the correct way to do it. One challenge with this method is keeping your stick parallel. A lot of people I see, they'll have something like this, and as they move across, their stick moves this way or that way on the rail. But again, with practice, you can get pretty good at this. It's a little more difficult to do over longer distances, but it is accurate, and you can see you end up with the same exact point. Now this is something that's very quick to do. If I was in a match and doing something like this, I could do this, find the midpoint, rotate my stick, come over here, do this, find my spot. Within 3-4 seconds, I'm ready to go, and then I can concentrate on making hitting that spot and making a good hit. The other method, which I like to do a little more often because it takes away the having to pivot the stick to a new line. It's the same exact thing. You'll see these dashed lines that I have here. Basically what I do is I go into the rail, I come across, find that midpoint, and then what I do is I take a line from the ball and come straight across until it intersects with my cue stick. And when it intersects with the shaft, I then look straight forward to the rail at that point. And you can see, based on the lines, that that point is exactly the same. Now, again, I like that method better because I can basically go here and here and just visually kind of look, and when I see that, I'm looking straight at the rail at the point I want to hit. And then again, I can decide if I'm going to hit it soft, medium, fast, and adjust whether I'm going to the diamond or opposite the diamond. So I use this a lot. I actually played in a tournament last night. I probably had 12 to 15 kick shots throughout the evening. I made 3 or 4 of them, and I probably use this method on 5, 6, 7 kick shots. Especially for one rail kick shots, it works really well. So it's a personal preference whether you want to do the parallel shift or whether you want to do this method. If you practice either one, you can see which one you like better and go from there. So again, if I were doing this just on a random shot, something like this, I would come here, find that midpoint, should be about right there, come over to that midpoint, and then I just look across, look at my stick, and I'm actually pointing pretty close to the diamond right here. So again, I would either hit this spot kind of opposite or go through the diamond. So I'm going to hit this one kind of hard. So I'll go ahead and go right through that diamond with some little bit of running English. Okay. So again, I use that pretty frequently. It only takes a couple of seconds to measure, and then you can devote the rest of your time to aiming and making a good strike on the ball. Okay, this is another one rail system. This is a N rail to N rail kicking system. So anytime you're kind of up here on this N rail and you have a ball that you're trying to hit somewhere down here, this is a really good system to use. So the baseline for the system is that wherever the cue ball is on the N rail, if you aim at the back of the side pocket, it will generally go to that same location on the opposite N rail. Again, this may vary slightly by tables, but I found this to be pretty accurate table to table. So if you can see, I draw a line straight to the back of that side pocket. And the reason I say the back of the side pocket is because generally on most tables, the back of the side pocket is in line with the diamond. So it basically would be that middle diamond that is not on the table. And so that's usually a pretty good aim point. So if you can see in this simple example, the cue ball and the 4 ball are exactly opposite. So if I aim through the back of that side pocket, I should end up hitting pretty close to that 4 ball. Okay, so pretty accurate. Again, I recommend kind of hitting a little more than a leg speed, but like a 2 to 3 speed out of 10. And it's important to stay on the vertical axis of the cue ball. Just kind of roll the ball naturally. Don't impart any accidental spin to it. So you might be asking, what do I do if the balls don't line up perfectly like that? And there's some nice adjustment you can make. So let's say we have this example here. So the cue ball's halfway between these 2 diamonds. So if you see this dashed line, if I go to the back of the pocket, I will come out to a spot equal to that on the opposite N rail. So let me go ahead and shoot down that line so you can see. Okay, so I come right to that spot on the opposite end rail. But in this case, the 4-ball is basically 1 diamond away from that spot. It's a little bit more than that, but roughly 1 diamond away. And so if I hit that spot, I'll at least hit the 4 coming in, or maybe hit the rail and come out and hit it. So pretty simple adjustment. If I want to hit a diamond further away, I just aim a diamond up from my normal spot. So instead of aiming at the back of the side pocket, I aim through. Again, same speed, same vertical axis. Okay, so pretty good result. Now again, you're not always going to make the ball, but the better you get at kicking, the more you practice it, the better you're going to have a sense of speed, and a lot of times you can kind of make good things. Again, in that case, I might try to hit the ball softly, and maybe I do make it, and if I hit it kind of roughly maybe 2/3 or whatever full, I could just shoot the ball kind of over to there and leave a difficult shot. Some shots you want to hit a little firmer, try to create some distance between the balls. A lot of times you want to try to hit about half a ball, and they kind of split and go in opposite directions, and leave a person on opposite ends of the table. So again, this works when the cue ball's out in the middle of the table, like more out in this area. You have to kind of realign your stick a little bit, because again, this is based on where you're at on this rail. So if I'm here and then I point in a new direction, my baseline cue ball actually changes as well. So when it's out in the middle of the table, you have to kind of recalibrate a little bit, if that makes sense, to make sure that the spot you're looking at is still a diamond away from where you're trying to hit. It may actually end up being a diamond and a half away if your stick kind of reorientates to a new position. But this is very accurate. This also works. I mentioned trying to hit at different speeds. So my adjustment for this, again, tends to work pretty well, is if I'm going to hit it a firm speed, I'm going to hit the same line. I'm not going to adjust my line at all. Use kind of and that tends to offset the shortness that would happen by normally hitting the ball firmer. So let me go ahead and try that just to show you. So again, if I were right on this line, I'm going to hit just kind of running English on the shot. Okay, so you can see I just missed it. It came up a little short. Okay. And again, anytime you make some adjustments to speed and things like that, it's an estimate. So I think if you can kind of roll the ball naturally and practice different speeds, kind of practice at a slow to medium speed and practice at a firm speed, you can kind of estimate the variations that might occur in between those speeds. And again, knowing your table is important. Some tables react, let's say, not in a linear fashion. So sometimes you hit the ball soft, you hit the ball medium, but then if you hit the ball firm, maybe there's a little bit of extra effect that it has based. So again, this system is very good system. The last thing I want to talk about, sorry, I got to go backwards a little bit. Apparently one shot at a time. Okay. The last system I want to talk about is something else that I learned out of a book. This came out of the Pro book. I believe Bob Henning is the author. I haven't read the book in a number of years, but if I remember correctly, he has a book called the Pro book. I think he came out with the Advanced Pro book, and then also has, I think, some DVDs that go along with those to demonstrate some of the shots. I actually really enjoyed the book. I can't remember when I bought it. It's probably been at least, I don't know, 15 years ago or something. But I wouldn't recommend it for a beginning player. It's more for like kind of an advanced intermediate or maybe going into an advanced player. It really talks a lot about some very intricate details of the game and different things you would do at a high level, competitive type level. One of the things he did in his book, which I'd never seen anywhere else, was he actually has a whole section on kicking maps. And so what he did was he had the cue ball originate from different positions and trying to hit different positions on the table. And he put numbers to the diamonds. I'll kind of punch this up a little bit. So for instance, if the cue ball is originating from the corner, and if I'm kicking off this rail, I may want to hit balls on all these diamond positions. Okay, so the first map, if I remember correctly, was 10 positions like this. So you'd start from the corner, and which diamond would you need to hit the one ball, and then hit the 2, the 3, the 4, all the way down this line. So the last shot, I'd be coming in here and doing it. He had all the kicking systems set up with using running English, which I like. Being a 3-cushion player, it's very natural. If you put a little extra English on it or not quite enough, the rail tends to help correct that for you, where when you're kicking with a dead center ball or on the vertical axis, you have to be very accurate with English. Any unwanted spin typically will result in a miss. So developed these kicking maps for his table. They worked great on a Brunswick or Olhausen table, which is what I used to play on at the time. And I revised a few of his numbers here and there and did my own experimentation with it. But as I learned years later when I went to start playing on diamond tables, some of these don't work very well, so I had to learn to make some adjustments for them. But essentially he had kicking maps from this corner, from this diamond, from this diamond, and from this diamond to all of these positions. And then he would move the cue ball up this rail and practice hitting these 3 diamonds from all of these spots. And then there were maps coming in from the other direction. So anyways, I found that very useful. Kind of go back to my lines and just show you at least. And what I like about this is just really learning the table. Now again, some people will do this visually, and that's great. However you do it, it's fine. I like putting numbers to things, and so when you have a kick like this, there's certain repetitive kicks that come up all the time, and you'll see a lot of pros when you watch the matches. There's sometimes they just get down on a shot and it looks like it's kind of fire away. It's because they kind of know that this diamond connects to that diamond connects to that diamond. So again, if I'm going to hit the 1 ball on most tables, the spot is about halfway between this first and second diamond. So I usually count from my 0 point where the cue ball is. So when I memorize these numbers, this would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 6.5. So I always remember that the corner going to 6.5 goes to that first diamond. So, and again, this would be kind of a slow to medium speed with some running English. Okay. To hit the second ball, the middle diamond, I basically want to go to this third diamond right here, which again in my numbering system was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay. So to hit this third position, the spot is actually in the side pocket. So when again, when Bob did these kicking maps, and I used the same principle, every once in a while there was a position where you would aim, but he would denote it as saying, okay, you have to use extra English on this shot, or maybe less English on this shot. And there was only a handful of those, so it was easy to remember. So in this case, the number would probably be about 4.2, which again puts me right into the hole of the side pocket. So instead, we would aim at the edge of this and add a little extra English to it. So I'm going to aim kind of just a little bit above the point, and instead of 1 tip of running English or half a tip, maybe a full tip. Okay. And then the spot to get to the corner pocket, it's basically between the third and fourth diamonds, so my number would be 3.5 for that. And again, just a nice writing English stroke. Okay, that came up a little short. I might have mishit that. That's a little better. So, and again, you can continue going all the way down the line, and this is a good exercise to do. One great thing about this is you can combine this method with the spot on the wall if the cue ball is not coming exactly out of a position that you're familiar with. So, for instance, I have not done these kicking maps, and really I haven't, how can I say, I haven't continued to memorize the numbers over the years. At one time I probably had 60, 70 numbers in my head for different spots. But what I did was there were certain positions that I knew very well, and so I could kind of, if I had one position from one area to get to those different diamonds, then I could hit it from anywhere. So let's just say I want to hit, again, this. And I know from what we just covered that if I'm coming out of the corner, I would come right at this third diamond to hit that spot. Well, if the cue ball is here, you know, again, probably 15 years ago or whatever it was, I probably knew the exact number to come from this middle diamond. But I learned I didn't really need to memorize all of those. I just needed to get one number, and I could use the spot on the wall to get there. So I'm going to, and people see me do this sometimes, and I've never had anybody question me when I'm playing a match, but it's kind of trying to kick from the cue ball to that ball, and you're not even looking anywhere near it. But I will come from this corner, go through my spot that I know goes to that middle diamond, and I'll try to project a spot out about 9 or 10 feet. So I'll get my spot, and then once I have my spot, I come over here to the cue ball and hit right through that spot. Okay. Try that one more time. I might have missed it. I'm actually looking at a spot that's kind of out in space right now because there's no definitive like tables or chairs or anything that are close enough. Yeah. So I think the spot I'm looking at is a little too far away. Let me try that one more time. Okay. So, and I mentioned this earlier when I covered spot on the wall, but there was a chair that I was looking at that you can't see that's probably about 15 or 16 feet away. So I tried to use that spot and tried to kind of picture a spot in front of it, but then when I came over here I actually looked at the spot, and you can see that because the spot was too far away, it actually it was close, but it was a little bit off. So I think that kind of covers everything that I wanted to cover for one rail systems. I have a really powerful one rail system. It's sort of a one, sort of a two rail system, so I'm going to cover that next time. I'm also going to go over the two major two rail systems. There's really only two of them to learn. There's a few obscure ones I've seen over the years, but really just two major ones that'll get you out of a lot of two rail kicks. And then I'm going to cover like kind of the diamond system, which is the three rail system that typically people talk about when they talk about diamond systems. And then we're also going to wrap everything up and talk about how all of these things apply to bank shots as well, because again, you'll find that a lot of these geometric systems apply to finding the proper point to bank a ball, but then you also have to learn all the effects that happen with bank shots and how to compensate for those as well. So again, look forward to that next month, and see you guys then. Thanks.